So you wanted to talk about Moore's law, because
Yes.
everybody speaks about Moore's law, like jang, it's exponential growth, and you are somewhat skeptical.
Well, I think it's worth putting it out there. You hear a lot of about disruption, a lot about the potential of big data, and you actually assume that the sort of the exponential curve that we're seeing is going to make a difference. But the key with disruption is to know which bits of the technologies are exponential and which are linear, because the linear ones are not interesting.
Right.
And the thing with Moore's law is it's over. We are not seeing the doubling every 18 months of chip capacity. And there's a lot of other things like the photonics on your phone and a lot of things which are also coming to an end. So unless we get the new step change of technologies, whether it's the new IBM Watson idea of processing or you get cold fusion or something, the world is reaching a point of maximum data capacity. And it's very interesting that 3 of the top 10 supercomputers in the world are owned by people like Royal Dutch Shell and Total, because at the time they could afford to build them to manage their oil reserves. Now, there's actually almost no corporate in the world that can afford the billions and billions of dollars that need to go into making one supercomputer. And yet, with everything that people are planning for big data in terms of working out what flowers you're going to buy your wife on the way home after a successful conference, that's going to require enormous computing power. It's not obvious who's going to pay for it.
All right, but everybody before you says, well, it's going to be exponential growth. Why are you the only one that said Moore's law is dead?
Well, because the facts are it is at the moment. I mean, so I think one has to accept the fact that you look at ASML, they are struggling to get down from 9 nano, whatever it is, to the next level down. It's taken them longer, it's taken them more money, because it's actually harder. And at some point, the world has to switch technologies. There has to be the next step of R&D to make it.
On top of an S-curve, there always comes a next S-curve.
Yes.
And don't we see that technology emerging then?
Well, I think if you talk to the very, very positive people, like the people at Google and everything else, they believe that technology will solve everything. They say things like, just imagine when the computer's clever enough to design itself, then we'll have a step change. You know, man will get out the way. But I think at the moment, it's not obvious that you can draw these extrapolating conclusions. I think there are going to be bumps on the road, and we're about to face one of those. So that's
bumps. Great to hear from you then. What kind of other investment decisions do you make compared to your peers?
Well, I think what I would say is, coming back to some of the themes that I think we've heard, I think one has to assume that a lot of business models are going to get disrupted, both by technology, mobility, emerging markets, and the arrival of the millennial. So I think sometimes you have to focus on not necessarily the winners, because sometimes you have to be looking at a crystal ball to work out. You have to work out who might lose and what areas of the economy may suffer. If everyone, as you do here, shops with Ahold and the goods come to your home, you don't need as many food retailing shops. Therefore, the consumer retail experience will change. If my kids shop on their phone, they'll never go to a shop. In which case, a lot of malls and other things will come under investment pressure. So I think one can think about, in the medium term, the longer term losers more easily than it is to focus on sometimes on the winners.
And so that's what you're doing, focusing on the losers to dump them.
Well, or just not to own them. You know, for many long-only businesses, I'm not saying I'm shorting them, but I think over time that will come. And I think the interesting thing with value investing, as you've seen recently, is a lot of the companies that have done poorly have never recovered. They've died. And I think the reversion to the mean cycle is now different because of this environment we're now in. If you haven't got it right, you revert to death, as I call it, rather than reverting to the mean.